You want to just say your name and where you're from and just a little bit of background for us?
John Williams from Madison, Missouri. Lived 34 years in Monroe County on a family farm. Been playing music since I was 7, so 20-some years.
Right. So this is a big question, which is to tell us about being in an apprenticeship with Pete McMahan.
Probably one of the best, most challenging experiences.
Yeah.
You know, I was some 15-year-old kid who played classical music, but I think I showed enough ambition and maybe promise, because Pete approached me about it.
Okay.
And I was, the guy I admired from the time I was, probably 4 years old. I was ecstatic, but, he was in his late 70s then, so there was a 60-year gap in age and patience level too.
Yeah.
To somebody in, in high school, you want to win everything.
Yeah.
And, I was taking lessons from the guy who had won more contests in the Midwest than anybody had ever had before.
Yeah.
But, that wasn't what he was all about. It was, where the tunes came from, passing along tunes that nobody else played except for him.
Yeah.
Tunes that nobody played for 80 years. I hadn't taken lessons from the time I was 13 or 14, formal lessons. And I was pretty much learning on my own, at my own speed, at home, with my record player and a jar of pennies on it to slow it down, so I could work at home at my own speed, but then, we're driving, it's about probably 60 to 70 miles just one way from our place to his house. And so it was soak up as much as I can, this is my only chance to have a one-on-one with him. He would play through an entire phrase or the entire tune and then put his fiddle down. All right, now you play it. And, previously he had just worked with John Griffin, who's an amazing musician and could pick things up right away.
Okay.
My mind doesn't quite work like that.
Yeah.
But the farther we got into it, he learned what worked for me, and I learned to be a little more understanding of, because that was, defeating at first.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I feel like I'm failing, I don't feel like I'm quite up to this at first, but learning how to work together, and that taught me a lot. And then teaching every year at Bethel has taught me a lot about how to, everybody learns different.
Yeah. So you and Bob Cathy put an application in, and actually would have been in like August of 2013, and you got accepted. Do you want to talk about from either when you put the application in or from when you got accepted, and tell us what that apprenticeship was like? And
I met Bob by chance, probably in 2012 maybe, and he had heard about me from Howard Marshall, and I think Howard had gave him one of my albums and showed him like my YouTube videos or something. And Bob had jam sessions in his garage. They called them Bob's Garage. Come to Bob's Garage. He had just started to play the fiddle. He had grown up playing bluegrass music, mandolin, and he wanted to be the next Willie Nelson on the guitar and everything. But he'd grown up also, like I did, going to fiddle contests, but, a few years before me. He's not that much older than I am.
Right.
But,
a little bit.
so he remembered Pete and Taylor McMahan, Niall Wilson, Jay Cockmeyer, and Gene Goforth, which is probably his most favorite fiddler, Gene and Cecil. But he had been introduced to it, Howard Marshall had kind of taken him under his wing and, gave him advice on what to do. And so I met Bob by chance at one of his jam sessions because he sent me an email, got my email from Howard, and then it was like from day one, me and Bob felt like I'd known him since I was a kid, it was like long lost brother.
So what is this master-apprentice relationship? What does it mean to you then and now?
Learning the music, of course, but the history behind all the tunes, and also the friendship between musicians, and you know, being able to, you know, not just play among musicians, but being able to share it. You know, we play at churches, the nursing homes, communities, community events, square dances. You know, we'll have jam sessions at our house and invite the neighborhood over. What Pete had told me, it's like,
Yeah.
who cares if you're not winning at the fiddle contests, or, you know, you don't have to be the best there is out there. Just be the best you can be at what you're doing. And we don't do it to make a living. You're doing it because you love it. You're doing it because, you know, nobody else is doing it, or, you know, doing it because you love it.
Right. Yeah.
There's just not that many people playing this kind of music anymore. It's, you know, and nothing against anybody else and the music they want to play. You know, everybody does it because they love it, but, you know, with everything being so much more available, a lot more people want to play, you know, stuff that's not exactly regional. And, you know, the more progressive fiddling is a lot more appealing to, you know, someone who's wanting to learn, or especially people who have classical backgrounds. You know, I mean, what's more challenging than some of that?
Yeah.
But what we play is also just as challenging,
Absolutely.
in my opinion. There's just not that many people playing these tunes and passing them on, and